Emily Vargas lived a life that felt too small for her big dreams. She was 27, and her home in sunny Arizona was perfectly nice. But it wasn't the kind of life you saw in glossy magazines. Her husband, Daniel Vargas, was a strong, kind man who worked hard in construction. He built houses for other people, coming home tired and covered in dust, but he always had a hug for Emily. He loved her simply and completely. But Emily didn't want simple. She wanted glitter. She wanted marble floors and clothes that sparkled and restaurants that floated above the city lights. Their marriage was like an old, scratched mirror, almost broken. Daniel wanted love, but Emily wanted luxury. The final crack happened one quiet evening when Emily was looking at her phone. A message popped up from an account she didn't recognize. It was named Sheikh Khalid Al-Rafi. The name sounded like something from a fantasy movie. The message had one sentence, but it changed everything. "You deserve the world. Allow me to show you." Emily's heart leaped. She didn't hesitate. She wrote back immediately. The Sheikh's messages were like something out of a fairy tale, but a strange one. He was perfectly polite, promising Emily a life where she would never have to worry about bills or dust again. He offered her a list of dazzling things: a private flight to the shining city of Dubai, a brand new life with a personal villa, and a huge amount of money every month just for her company, a companionship arrangement. Daniel begged her not to go. He sat on their simple, worn sofa, holding her hands, his eyes full of fear and sadness. "Emily, this isn't real," Daniel pleaded. "That kind of money always comes with strings. Stay here. We can fix this, just you and me." But Emily was already mentally packing the glittering new dresses she couldn't afford. The promise of luxury was louder than Daniel's love. "You don't understand, Daniel," she said, her voice sharp with excitement. "My life is about to start. I'm finally getting what I deserve." She packed her bags, one small suitcase filled with everything she owned, and walked out of the door, chasing the phantom sparkle of gold. The next day, Emily landed at the huge Dubai International Airport. She expected cameras, crowds, and customs. Instead, two very serious men in immaculate white kanduras met her at the gate. They quickly escorted her to a waiting black SUV with windows that were completely tinted. There were no license plates. She didn't go through customs. She didn't have her passport scanned. There was no record of her arrival. Emily thought this was the special treatment of a VIP, but it was the very first sign she was ignoring. She was being erased. The villa Emily was taken to was utterly magnificent. It was built right on the edge of the sea, with endless marble floors that shone like ice and accents of pure gold on every piece of furniture. The swimming pool seemed to spill right into the ocean. "This is the world," Emily whispered to herself, walking through the breathtaking rooms. But the beautiful world quickly revealed its scary side. The two serious men who brought her, the guards, became her constant shadows. They weren't there to serve. They were there to watch. Emily soon learned the strange, chilling rules of her new life. No phone. Her device was taken the moment she arrived. No internet. The villa was sealed off from the outside world. No contact with family. She couldn't send Daniel a message, even a simple "I'm safe." No leaving the villa without the guard's permission, which was never given. And the worst, cameras watched her in every room, except the tiny secure bathroom. Emily wasn't a guest in the Golden Villa. She was a display piece. The Sheikh Khalid visited her only at night. He was incredibly charming, polite, and soft-spoken. He always brought her expensive gifts, dazzling jewelry and clothes, but something about his eyes, which were cold and completely empty, sent a chill through her. He treated her like a beautiful possession. Back in Arizona, Daniel Vargas was frantic. 2 weeks after Emily left, he filed a missing person report. The police were not helpful. "She left voluntarily, Mr. Vargas," the officer said with a sigh. "She's living a new life. She's not missing, she's just gone." Daniel knew that wasn't true. Emily would never leave him without a single word. He was heartbroken, but his love turned into a fierce, protective determination. He drained his savings and contacted a private investigator, PI, named Nina Carver. Nina specialized in international disappearance cases and was known for being relentless. Nina quickly went to work. She made a disturbing discovery that confirmed Daniel's fears. She called Daniel. "Mr. Vargas, I've checked every flight manifest, commercial and private, that entered Dubai in the last 2 weeks. There is no record of Emily Vargas entering the country. Not a single scan. Not a single customs stamp." Nina's voice grew grave. "Which means one thing, Daniel. She didn't enter Dubai as a free person. She was brought into the country illegally, at someone's command. She is not a guest. She is a captive." The golden dream Emily had chased was turning into a locked nightmare, and Daniel and Nina were the only 2 people who knew she was trapped inside a golden cage. After 2 weeks in the luxurious prison, Emily's golden dream had completely faded. She wasn't living in a palace. She was locked in a gilded cage. She spent hours watching the guards' routine. There was a specific 5-minute window late in the afternoon when the shift changed, and both guards walked around the front of the villa, leaving the backyard unguarded. One scorching hot afternoon, Emily decided she couldn't wait another minute. She had to get out. She slipped out the back door. The air hit her face like a blast from an oven. She raced across the marble patio and reached the tall stone fence that separated the villa from the endless red desert beyond. The fence was smooth, but Emily found a tiny crack in the mortar and hauled herself up. Her hands were raw and her feet were burning on the hot stone, but she kept climbing, fueled by desperation. She made it over the top and dropped onto the desert sand. Her slippers were useless, so she kicked them off and ran, barefoot, down the long, empty road. She ran for what felt like miles, the heat blurring the landscape. She was free. She was running back to Daniel. Then she heard it. A car engine, fast and silent, coming up behind her. A sleek white SUV screeched to a halt beside her. The driver's window rolled down. Sheikh Khalid was inside, sitting calmly in the passenger seat. He wasn't yelling. His expensive white robes were perfectly pressed, and his expression was completely empty. Emily stumbled to a stop, panting, her heart sinking. "Hello, Emily," the Sheikh said, his voice soft, almost conversational. "Lost, my dear?" Emily backed away, tears streaming down her dusty face. "I want to go home. Please, just let me go. I won't tell anyone what happened here." The Sheikh didn't get angry. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply said the one thing that crushed her hope completely. "If you try to leave again, Emily," he said, leaning forward slightly, "I won't hurt you. I'll kill someone you love. I know where Daniel works. I know where he sleeps." Daniel's face flashed in her mind, his kind eyes, his tired smile. The thought of bringing danger to the one person who still loved her was unbearable. Emily froze. She returned to the car willingly. That day, Emily realized 2 terrible truths. She was never going home, and her biggest fear wasn't for herself, but for the man she had betrayed. She was trapped, and Daniel was the invisible rope holding her captive. Back inside the luxurious prison, Emily changed her focus. Running was impossible. She had to communicate her captivity without the Sheikh or the ever-present cameras realizing it. She started looking for things that were unique to the villa. She noticed the beautiful, heavy curtains were made of a very specific, ornate Arabic silk fabric, a deep emerald green embroidered with small golden thread patterns. She knew no one else in Dubai would have exactly this pattern. She found a loose thread on one of the curtains, and slowly, carefully, over 3 nights, she worked at the seam until she had a small, unique fragment of the expensive fabric. She carefully wrapped the scrap in a tissue and hid it under her mattress. This was her proof of location. Next, she needed to show she was struggling. The cameras watched everything, but they were outside the bathroom. Emily realized she could use the cold marble windowsills in the bedroom. She would subtly, deliberately, press her wrists against the sharp edge of the window frame, pretending to look out at the sea. After a few minutes of pressure, small bruises would bloom on her delicate wrists, marks that looked like she had tried to pull away from something binding her. She knew if she ever was found, those bruises would scream captivity to any honest investigator. Emily also wore a piece of jewelry the Sheikh had given her, a beautiful but gaudy gold anklet with tiny bells. She hated it, but it was a unique marker. The Sheikh thought she loved the gifts. In reality, Emily was using his expensive gifts against him. She spent her days memorizing the patterns of the light on the water, the times the security car circled the villa, and the names of the few staff she was allowed to interact with. She had to be patient, wait for the perfect moment, and leave all 3 clues, the fabric, the bruises, and the anklet, to prove she was held prisoner in this golden cage. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Nina Carver was working tirelessly on the case. Nina discovered that the Sheikh Khalid was a huge importer of expensive, rare art, and always had huge shipments coming and going through private channels. Nina knew that if Emily was smuggled in, she was treated like a valuable import. Nina focused her search on the private docks and the restricted shoreline where the Sheikh's property line ended. She was looking for any abnormal movement, anything that didn't fit the pattern of luxury. Emily was leaving the silent signal. Nina was the relentless receiver, ready to tune into the truth. A month into her silent plan, Emily found a small flicker of light in the darkness. One of the guards, a quiet 24-year-old named Yusuf, was different. The other guards were stern and empty-eyed, but Yusuf treated her like a human being. He would quietly bring her extra water when she was thirsty or leave a book on her bedside table when he thought the Sheikh wouldn't notice. Emily waited for the right moment. One evening, as Yusuf was walking her back from a supervised walk in the garden, she stopped, looking straight into his eyes. "Yusuf," she whispered quickly, "I didn't come here for this. I'm a prisoner. I need help." Yusuf's face was pale with fear, but he didn't look away. "Don't speak, Emily. Cameras hear everything." But the next day, he came into her room alone to deliver fresh towels. He didn't look at her, but his words were quiet and fast. "You weren't brought for companionship, Emily," he confessed, staring at the floor. "You were brought because he collects women, like those art pieces he imports." Emily's blood ran cold. "How many?" "I don't know," Yusuf whispered. "I'm new, but I hear stories. The women, they leave. They try to escape. They are beautiful. Then they are suddenly gone. Yusuf confirmed her worst fear. I saw 5 other women vanish mysteriously after attempting escape. They were here one day, and the next, their rooms were empty, and the Sheikh would be giving away their clothes to staff. Emily realized she was not just fighting for her life. She was fighting for the memory of the women who had disappeared before her. "Yusuf, please," Emily pleaded, her voice choked with emotion. "I have a husband. If you help me, I can promise you help and safety outside this place." Yusuf looked utterly miserable. He was terrified of the Sheikh, but he was more afraid of what he was witnessing. He made the brave, terrifying choice. "I will help you, but you must follow my instructions exactly. We have one chance." The plan began immediately. Yusuf started observing the Sheikh's schedule. He found the perfect time. 3 days from now, the Sheikh had a documented all-night engagement out of the city. They would use a maintenance vehicle, slip out through the service entrance, and drive toward a hidden service road near the shore, where Yusuf knew a public road could be accessed. Emily secretly took the fragment of the emerald fabric and wrapped it tightly around her wrist, covering it with a long cuff. She was ready to leave her signal. Meanwhile, Nina Carver, the PI, landed in Dubai. She knew she couldn't rely on official channels, which were clearly protecting the Sheikh. Nina used her under-the-table contacts, mostly taxi drivers, hotel staff, and former domestic workers, to piece together the movements of Sheikh Khalid al-Rafi. She learned that the Sheikh had multiple properties, but he always returned to the main villa near the restricted shoreline. Nina focused on the sea. If she arrived without a trace, she might leave without a trace, Nina thought. She rented a small boat, pretending to be a wealthy tourist, and circled the coastline near the Sheikh's property. The shoreline was massive, sealed off by tall walls and private security. Then she noticed the detail Daniel had missed, a small, hidden private dock, not for pleasure boats, but for industrial freight. This dock was constantly busy, even at night. Nina realized the truth. The Sheikh used this private port to bring in his illegal art and, most likely, to bring in people he didn't want recorded, like Emily. Nina contacted Daniel, who was still thousands of miles away, working construction to pay her fees. "Daniel, I know where she is," Nina said softly. "A massive villa on a restricted shoreline. But getting her out will be the hardest thing I've ever done. The place is fortress-like." Daniel's voice broke. "She's alive? She's safe?" "She's alive, but she is not safe," Nina confirmed. "She's being watched every second. I need you to stay strong. I am going to try and breach the perimeter, but I need an ally inside the complex." Little did Nina know, Emily had already found her ally in Yusuf, and the escape plan was already in motion. Nina, disguised as a landscape architect, managed to get hired by a service company that handled the high-end maintenance of the Sheikh's properties. It was a risky move, but it was the only way to get close enough to leave a message. That night, Nina, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and carrying a clipboard, walked the grounds outside the stone fence. She couldn't find a way in, but she found the spot where Emily had tried to climb out, scuff marks on the rock and a faint, dried bloodstain. Nina realized Emily had been here. She was fighting. Now, Nina just had to find the signal. Emily was undoubtedly leaving. The night of the escape arrived. The moon was a thin crescent, and the desert outside the villa was pitch black. Yusuf was nervous, his hands shaking as he monitored the surveillance feeds in the security room. "He's gone. His convoy left 10 minutes ago, heading inland," Yusuf whispered to Emily over a secure, temporary earpiece he had smuggled to her. Emily was calm. focused entirely on the image of Daniel's face. She had to make it. She dressed in a simple, dark outfit. Before she left her room, she took out the fragment of emerald Arabic fabric and wrapped it around her wrist, securing it tightly beneath her watch strap. She didn't want the signal to be missed. She also made sure to put on the one piece of jewelry she hated, the heavy gold anklet with the tiny bells. She planned to rip it off and leave it as proof of her confinement. At 2:14 a.m., Emily met Yusuf at the service entrance. Yusuf, driving a dirty white service vehicle, looked terrified but determined. "Don't speak," Yusuf warned. "We have to look like we are on a routine maintenance run." They drove slowly through the interior service roads. As they passed the laundry facility, Emily spotted a huge, overflowing garbage container. She discreetly rolled down the window and, with a quick, painful pull, tore her wrist away from the watch strap, leaving a tiny piece of the fabric hidden among the discarded linens. Proof left, location signaled. The service vehicle sped up, heading for the outer service road that led toward the open desert. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt the wind on her face and the intoxicating scent of freedom. Hope surged through her veins. She was going home. Yusuf drove fast, pushing the small vehicle to its limit. "Almost there, Emily. Just past that dune, it's public road." But as they topped the dune, the air filled with blinding bright white headlights. Not one car, not two, a convoy. Black SUVs erupted from the shadows, surrounding the small service vehicle on all sides. Yusuf slammed on the brakes, his face slack with terror. He knew, Emily. Run! The Sheikh had only pretended to leave the city. He had suspected Yusuf all along. The black SUVs blocked every escape route. Doors slammed open, and large, armed men in black tactical gear poured out. "Run, Emily! Into the darkness!" Yusuf screamed, grabbing a small toolkit to defend himself. Emily didn't hesitate. She threw open the passenger door and sprinted into the vast, unforgiving darkness of the desert. The loose sand slowed her down, but she ran, fueled by pure adrenaline and the image of Daniel. A booming voice, amplified by a loudspeaker, cut through the night. "Stop now, Emily Vargas, or the consequences will be immediate." A single gunshot split the air. Emily stumbled, turning back. Yusuf fell first, collapsing heavily beside the service vehicle. A wave of crushing defeat washed over Emily. Yusuf, the only kind soul in that terrible place, was silenced. Before she could process the fear, two massive men grabbed her. She kicked and screamed, fighting with all her strength, but she was no match for their brute force. They dragged her, kicking and screaming, back toward the waiting cars. The Sheikh was there. He hadn't moved. He stood by the main black SUV, observing the capture. His expression was empty, cold, and entirely devoid of human feeling. Emily was thrown violently onto the plush leather seat of the Sheikh's SUV. Tears streamed down her face. She looked at the man who had bought her freedom with a lie. "Please, I just want to go home," Emily wept, her voice raw. The Sheikh looked at her, his eyes unreadable. His answer was soft, almost compassionate, but carried the weight of a death sentence. "Homes are for the living, Emily," he said, "and you, my dear, have chosen to be a difficult piece of art." Emily knew then that her time was almost over. She wasn't going back to the villa. She was going to disappear, just like the 5 women before her. But she still had one signal left. Emily was terrified, but focused. She was not going to vanish without a trace. Daniel and Nina needed proof. The Sheikh's men were moving the SUV toward the private dock, the place Nina had identified. They were taking her to the sea, As the men roughly held her arms, ready to secure her, Emily fought fiercely one last time. It was a desperate struggle not to escape, but to leave the signal. She thrashed and struggled against the powerful hands gripping her. As they tried to secure her, she intentionally scraped her wrist hard against the sharp metal frame of the car seat. The tiny piece of emerald fabric wrapped under her watch strap tore away completely. With a final, enormous effort, she pulled her foot back and ripped off the heavy, bell-covered gold anklet. She threw the anklet, along with the scrap of fabric, onto the floor of the vehicle, hoping it would be missed when the car was cleaned. Her captors subdued her completely, wrapping her in heavy blankets to muffle her screams. The SUV stopped at the private industrial dock. The air smelled strongly of salt and diesel. The last thing Emily saw before being lifted out of the vehicle was the black, unforgiving water of the Arabian Sea. A terrible, cold silence descended upon the dock. Meanwhile, the next morning, Nina Carver was circling the restricted shoreline in her small boat, pretending to fish. She knew something had happened because the area around the private dock was swarming with the Sheikh's security personnel. Nina had an uneasy feeling. She risked sailing closer than she should. She saw the service vehicle Emily and Yusuf used being towed back to the property, the back door dented. Nina knew she had missed the escape, but she hadn't missed the disaster. She focused her attention on the water and the edge of the private dock, hoping the current would bring her a clue. She had to find the signal Emily was meant to leave behind. Days passed. Daniel was on the verge of a breakdown. Knowing the silence meant the worst. Then, Nina Carver called him. Her voice was strained, with terrible, sad triumph. "Daniel, I have proof. Not of death, but of captivity and struggle." Nina explained that she had managed to bribe a maintenance worker who regularly cleaned the Sheikh's vehicles after high-security events. The worker, looking for spare change, had found 2 unique items hidden deep under the passenger seat of the Sheikh's SUV. A beautiful, gaudy gold anklet with tiny bells clearly ripped off. A small fragment of emerald Arabic fabric wrapped around a tissue. Nina had also discreetly filmed the interior of the car's frame, showing where the metal was freshly scratched, surrounded by what looked like dried blood. Daniel immediately recognized the anklet from the photos Emily had sent him of her new gifts. "That's her anklet, Nina. She hated that thing. She wouldn't have just dropped it," Daniel cried. Nina then showed the fabric fragment to her high-end contacts. It was positively identified as a unique, custom-made silk used only for the curtains in Sheikh Khalid's private seaside villa. Emily was in the Sheikh's car after attempting to escape. Anklet location. She struggled fiercely. Torn anklet, scratches on the frame. She was held captive at the Sheikh's private villa, custom fabric. The bruise pattern Nina had documented earlier confirmed she was actively attempting to escape her confinement. The local UAE authorities released a predictable statement. A small, accidental incident involving a stolen vehicle on the private shoreline. No foul play suspected. They ignored the evidence, but Daniel and Nina didn't need the local police anymore. They had the evidence and the location. Emily had died in pursuit of freedom, but her signals survived. Daniel broke down upon seeing the evidence, not in grief, but in proud realization. Emily hadn't left him for gold. She had been trapped, and she had fought back courageously. He was no longer looking for a runaway wife. He was looking for justice, for a hero. Nina Carver played her final, dangerous hand. Using her contacts, she tracked down the terrified former security employee who had spoken to her before. He had heard the rumors about the incident at the private dock. Nina showed him the anklet and the fabric. Emily Vargas, Nina stated. What happened to her and the other women? The man trembled, looking around wildly. He confessed the horrifying truth in a terrified whisper. The Sheikh does not want records. The women who try to escape, they are taken to the private dock. They are silenced and put on one of the freight boats. They are made to disappear forever. He confirmed that Emily was the 12th woman to vanish in this way. Nina now had the evidence, the signals, and the testimony, the victim count and method. She immediately contacted international human rights organizations, the American Embassy, and a massive investigative news network. She gave them everything: the illegal entry, the 12 victims, the anklet, the fabric, the false reports, and the testimony of the terrified former employee. The scandal was a global explosion. The Sheikh, untouchable by local law and wealth, was utterly ruined by global shame and international sanctions. His name was stripped of its title, his assets frozen worldwide, and his businesses were dismantled. He couldn't be jailed, but he was exiled from the world of power and respect he craved. The golden cage was smashed, not by a single blow, but by the relentless effort of a loving husband and a determined investigator, proving that even the most powerful villains cannot bury every single piece of evidence. Daniel Vargas finally found closure. He knew his wife hadn't been a greedy traitor. She had been a brave, desperate captive who used her final moments to send a message home. He never lit a candle for her betrayal. He lit a candle every night, right beside the simple sofa they once shared, to remember the courageous woman who taught him that sometimes the greatest battles are fought in the dark, and that not all kingdoms are built with crowns. Some are exposed and destroyed by a single piece of cloth and a determined heart.